The US president says change needs to be bold as Joe Biden signs a raft of executive orders to combat the effects of global warming. This as his new Secretary of State maps out his vision of future foreign policy. An angry snarl from Brussels after one drug company announced a snarl-up of deliveries with no breakthrough after crisis talks. The EU is still calling on AstraZeneca to turn out more doses of its COVID-19 vaccine from British plants. And is France heading for its third nationwide lockdown with nearly 27,000 new coronavirus cases reported? The government says the current overnight curfew measures aren't doing enough. Hello and welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. I'm Thomas Waterhouse. First, this hour, Joe Biden has been eager to show that his White House will be green. The new US president has signed a stack of executive orders on climate change, including measures to pause new oil and gas leases on public land and to direct federal agencies to stamp out fossil fuel subsidies. Leading Republicans have already rubbished the signings, calling them pie-in-the-sky mandates and directives which restrict America's mining, oil and gas industries. Let's listen now, though, to what Mr. Biden had to say a little earlier.
In my view, we've already waited too long to deal with this climate crisis. We can't wait any longer. We see it with our own eyes, we feel it, we know it in our bones. And it's time to act. And I might note parenthetically, if you notice, the attitude of the American people toward greater impetus on focusing on climate change and doing something about it has increased across the board, Democrat, Republican, Independent. That's why I'm signing today an executive order to supercharge our administration's ambitious plan to confront the existential threat of climate change. It is an existential threat.
Well, staying in the US, this Wednesday has been Antony Blinken's first full day in his new job as Secretary of State. He's already told his staff that the world is watching intently as he listed the coronavirus pandemic, climate change and the threats posed against democracy as some of his most pressing challenges. Mr. Blinken has said that the US will return to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal when Tehran meets its commitments, and that his team is reviewing all of Russia's actions which continue to alarm Washington. This, though, is what he had to say about one of his country's most fraught relationships of recent times.
The relationship between the United States and China is arguably the most important relationship that we have in the world going forward. It's going to shape a lot of the future that we all live. And increasingly, that relationship has some adversarial aspects to it. It has competitive ones, and it also still has cooperative ones. And the cooperative ones are in areas where it's in our mutual interest.
Crisis talks between the EU and one leading coronavirus vaccine producer have failed to make any headway. The Health Commissioner in Brussels has expressed her regret at the continued lack of clarity from the managers of AstraZeneca, adding that they need to deliver on their commitments. Brussels is pushing for the drug manufacturer to make up for a forecast shortfall in delivering the much-needed jabs by using British production sites. Karis Garland reports.
Tensions grew again between AstraZeneca and the European Union on Wednesday. The vaccine producer warned it would only deliver a quarter of the expected 80 million doses for the first 3 months of this year, claiming production issues at its factory in Belgium. But this has infuriated Brussels, and it threatens its plan to inoculate 70% of adults by the end of August.
The 27 European Union member states are united that AstraZeneca needs to deliver on its commitments in our agreements. I call on AstraZeneca to engage fully, to rebuild trust, to provide complete information, and to live up to its contractual, societal, and moral obligations.
In an interview with Italian newspaper La Repubblica, AstraZeneca's CEO, Pascal Soriot, said delivery figures were targets and not firm commitments. The EU, however, rejected this and called on the drug maker to publish the contract. There are also questions over where Europe's doses will come from. Sorios said vaccines meant for the EU were made in 4 labs on the continent, but Brussels argues the company had also committed to providing doses from 2 plants in the UK. The EU has signed deals for 6 different vaccines, but so far regulators have only authorised one made by Pfizer-BioNTech and another by Moderna.
Moving on, the number of daily COVID-19 cases here in France has jumped to its highest level since mid-November this Wednesday. Almost 27,000 more people have tested positive, with a further 350 deaths. Ministers are still mulling over what they can do next to rein in this outbreak. And following a meeting of the Defence Council this Wednesday, the government's spokesperson said the current overnight curfew isn't slamming the brakes on the virus hard enough, and that a third national lockdown could well be in the pipeline. Yinka Oyetade has more.
It's been nearly 2 weeks since authorities in France imposed a nationwide 6 p.m. curfew in a bid to stop the number of coronavirus cases from spiralling out of control. But with hospital admissions increasing at an alarming rate, it seems the curfew has not been enough.
Le couvre-feu à 18h a une efficacité aujourd'hui relative. Il a une efficacité, et nous avons des données qui permettent de montrer qu'il freine dans une certaine mesure la circulation du virus, mais à ce stade, il ne freine pas suffisamment la circulation du virus pour être considéré comme pleinement efficace face aux défis sanitaires.
Several scientific experts have sounded the alarm, calling for stricter measures to be taken. This is the more contagious and deadlier British variant continues to circulate on French soil. Authorities now say they are considering different scenarios. France could see a return to a stricter lockdown like the one imposed in March last year, which forced all non-essential shops to close their doors and meant students had to continue their education from home. Or the government may choose a slightly softer option, which would allow schools to stay open, like last autumn. Among French people, though, the threat of another national lockdown is taking a toll on morale that is already low.
J'en ai marre, quoi, clairement. On travaille et on rentre à la maison, et puis on travaille et puis on rentre à la maison, mais il n'y a plus de vie autour de ça, quoi.
Surtout la perte de perspective. C'est-à-dire que ça va durer et ça n'en finit jamais, quoi.
The final decision on whether to impose a national lockdown or not will depend on the data recorded over the coming days.
Next, by a vote of 367 to 7, lawmakers in the DRC have decided to push the Prime Minister there from office in a no-confidence vote. The country's interim speaker says that Sylvestre Ilunga now has 24 hours to hand in his notice, but in a letter to the country's president this Wednesday, he says he won't be going anywhere until a permanent speaker is appointed. With more from the capital, Kinshasa, here's our correspondent Clément Bonnereau.
There was very little doubt that this vote would pass after 301 out of 500 MPs filed a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister and his government last Friday. MPs argue that Sylvestre Ilunga has failed to bring peace to the east of the country, fight rampant corruption and strengthen DR Congo's battered economy. It is on these grounds that 367 MPs voted to oust him this Wednesday, and among them hundreds of lawmakers from the FCC, the political movement of the former President Joseph Kabila, MPs who have switched allegiance to President Felix Tshisekedi in recent weeks. The next steps, of course, will be crucial. The Prime Minister has 24 hours to tender his resignation. It's unclear, though, whether he will do so. In a statement released earlier, he said that Wednesday's vote was, I quote, illegal. In any case, this is a major political victory for President Felix Tshisekedi, who has tried to free himself from the grip of his powerful predecessor, Joseph Kabila. Last month, he moved to end the ruling coalition with the FCC and called for a new majority in parliament. However, Tshisekedi's new political grouping, known as the Sacred Union, Union Sacrée, has yet to formally take over the majority, as this requires a separate declaration.
To the slopes of Kenya now, where experts have been racing to rescue one coppery-skinned and white-striped animal which was on the verge of extinction. With more on the efforts to boost the numbers of mountain bongos, here's Maud Julien.
Picking their way through the undergrowth are some of the world's last mountain bongos. They can only be found in the wild in Kenya, and even here they're a rare sight.
The mountain bongo is a very special species, and it's endemic to Kenya, highly endangered, less than 100 individuals known to be left out in the wild.
The animals have been hunted for their bushmeat and their prized coat, skull and curved horns, and many also died of diseases caused by interaction with humans. Some were taken to zoos overseas, and many of those in Mount Kenya today are descended from bongos that were reintroduced here in 2004 after decades abroad. Conservationists say they've only recently adapted to living in the wild.
So the bongo that are coming back from zoo, where the veterinary and husbandry is very different, it is a very sanitized environment. When they come back here, they need a very long time to be able to acclimatate. It has taken such a long time to come to where we are today. And having a healthy bongo population, in the last 5 years, we had more than 70 births.
An extra challenge is the bongo's shrinking habitat. Forests in Kenya's highlands are rapidly disappearing due to illegal logging and growing human populations.
Ultimately, what needs to be done is their habitat has to be highly protected. And these are the highland forests. So it won't be much use if we rear them successfully, but we end up with no appropriate habitat in which to release them.
In a bid to boost the recovery of the species in the wild, the Kenyan government has launched an 800-acre bongo sanctuary on the slopes of Mount Kenya.
Next, he's the first to cross the finish line, but that doesn't mean that he's picking up the trophy. The 36-year-old French skipper Charlie Dalin has been the first to return to France at the end of a grueling Vendée Globe round the world yacht race, completing the course in 80 days, 6 hours, 15 minutes and 47 seconds. But one of the men hot on his heels and also predicted to win, the German Boris Herrmann, has hit a fishing vessel some 160 kilometres from the end port. With more on this tense finish, here's our sports editor, Simon Harding.
What we know at this moment in time is certainly that it slowed him down considerably. He was stationary for a few minutes, a few dozen minutes actually, which means that he's losing time now. Predictions expected him to arrive 4 hours around Charlie Dalin, which potentially does give him a 2-hour cushion to fix his boat, to get it working again before he loses that opportunity of finishing first. So yes, there is that 6-hour time bonus. We don't know much more at this moment in time, but of course it is a big blow for him, and it does show, Selina, that until you've crossed that finish line, you're not guaranteed of anything in the Vendée Globe.
And finally, it's been rubbed out of the diary in one spot, but put back in just a few pages further on. The organisers of the annual Cannes Film Festival say the red carpet won't be rolled out in the French Riviera resort in May this year as planned, but rather in July. With more on how COVID-19 is changing Cannes, here's Caris Garland.
Postponed, but not cancelled. Organisers of Cannes Film Festival are erring on the side of caution. The festival is set to take place from the 6th to the 17th of July and not in May, as is tradition. But tradition was also broken last year, the event cancelled for the first time since World War II. It was instead replaced by a virtual convention for industry professionals, while some films were presented at other festivals. 3 months ago, organisers decided to hold a mini-festival, screening 4 films from the official 2020 selection. Although small in scale, the festival's president said it had a strong symbolic value.
We know the importance that conventions, festivals and all the events have for Cannes' economy, and it's important that there is this friendship with Cannes.
More than a glamorous event, the festival is a giant marketplace for French and foreign films, and where producers and directors can meet financial and artistic partners. It's therefore hoped this year's edition can revive the film industry, suffering from cinema closures, cancelled productions and delayed release dates.
That's all for now, but do stay tuned.